Hello and welcome to my third grade book report. Some of you might be familiar with a certain name that helped define my childhood and the literature I read. It's interesting because the books like Where the Sidewalk Ends and Falling Up, titles with many poems written inside, came from someone who didn't want to write children's literature to begin with. I grew up with such beloved poems as Prayer of the Selfish Child, which goes something like this. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. And if I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my toys to break, so none of the other kids can use them. Amen. I think you know who I'm talking about at this point. And I think this will kind of set the tone for talking about another one of Shel Silverstein's literary works, his most famous literary work. But before I reveal it and tell you the story, I have a couple of things to share. For those who don't know too much about him, this first point might seem like a weird tangent, but I invite you to stick with me here. I'll make sure it makes sense in tone. As I grew up with these books, I also grew up listening to musical artists like Johnny Cash. I still sometimes listen to the music because my dad listens to it still. I don't remember the albums we had specifically, but I remember in one of the CDs we had, one of the songs was A Boy Named Sue, famously performed for a live audience in San Quentin. Everyone in the audience loved it, and everyone laughed at the ridiculousness of the lyrics. In the song's story, Sue was the name given to him by his father, who left the family. Because of the name he was given, Sue was made fun of, and life for him became very, very difficult. Out of anger, Sue eventually vowed to get back at his father for the pain he lived for having a gendered name. After searching, Sue found his father at a bar, and a fight broke out between the two. It ends with Sue holding his father at gunpoint before the father can even pull out his own pistol. And the song is supposed to end with a bittersweet note. The last dialogue we hear from the father is that Sue fought a hell of a fight, and won't be blamed for killing him, but should always remember just one thing. The toughness he earned came from the father. After all, he was that son of a bitch that named him Sue. The song ends with a hug and a pun. Overall, as I said before, it's supposed to be a bittersweet way to end the song. But then it starts going downhill. This song was specifically from Sue's perspective. And at the same time, another song exists from the perspective of the father, and it's much more degrading, and it leaves the listener feeling a bit disgusted. I've linked in the description A Boy Named Sue, sung by Johnny Cash, and the alternate take, Father of a Boy Named Sue, sung by none other than the writer of both songs, Shel Silverstein. You see? Still relevant. I was able to tie it together eventually. He made a recording of himself singing the alternate rendition to, and I quote, "give the old man equal time." In the opening verse of the song, the father explains how he couldn't handle raising the boy. He wasn't ready for the responsibility, and he knew what he was going to do, that is, leave the family, was wrong. He didn't like his son. Even when the kid wasn't fully self-aware of his actions and surroundings. Out of petty revenge, the father named him Sue. That's the entire reason. It was simply and entirely out of spite. At the end, when the father is buttering up Sue, he's just lying. At least that's the way it seems. The name Sue wasn't given to the kid to make him stronger. He just did it to bully his son for being a toddler, which... I mean, yeah. In both renditions, he's 3 years old. What did you expect, Pop? But, yeah. It's pretty crystal clear here. The father is being manipulative. And with both perspectives, we can tell he's a very good manipulator. Because he was able to save himself from getting shot by Sue, and he was able to justify his revenge. Now, this is quite the departure compared to the tone of an amplified cautionary tale of a sharp-toothed snail that lives in your nose and will bite your finger off if you keep picking at it. That contrast is just hilarious. But now that the more serious tone is established, we could start to talk about the story I've been leading up to. Instead of a story of manipulation, we look at a story of narcissism, one that I never really gave another thought until now. The Giving Tree. Before reviewing it, here's the second point I wanted to make. I looked at this book through a very specific lens growing up. I was part of a devout Mormon family, so of course I had to relate everything to God somehow. It's simply how I was conditioned to think and learn about the world. In the book, the tree endlessly gave to the boy, no questions asked. The boy wasn't happy, and when he came to the tree for help with things he needed to thrive, the boy ended up getting what he needed to live successfully, and the tree was always happy to give. Even though there was one part of the story where I was a bit thrown off, it made me feel happy knowing that the tree would always have something to offer. She could always make the boy feel happy, no matter what. That was my understanding of the book when I was growing up, and that was the synopsis I explained during the church service. I was up on the podium, and I spoke about the story, how it made me feel good. I said something like this during that talk. God is like the giving tree. He will provide for anyone with a broken heart and contrite spirit, and God will always be happy knowing that He gave us what we need to be happy. Now, the stage is finally set. Now, I can tell you about how I feel about this book today. For concerns over copyright, I won't read the book verbatim, but I will paraphrase what happens. If you're really interested in reading the book, pause the video and check the description for the Liberty Union High School's PDF. For those who have read it and just need a refresher, just wait for other friends to come back from reading it. Alright, we good? Excellent. The tree and the boy grew up together. The tree gave the boy things to do so that they could play with each other, and both of them were very happy. But eventually, the boy started growing more distant from the tree as he got older, often leaving her by herself for long periods. The tree became sad, but eventually the boy came back, maybe around in his 20s like me. The tree became excited and asked if he wanted to play and be happy. But the boy said, "Hell no, can you give me some dough?" At least, I imagine that's what he could have said. I mean, given Shel's track record with adult literature and content, he probably could have made that an actual quote. But anyways, the boy needed money. The tree responded saying she didn't have any money, but instead suggested that the boy sell her apples to be happy. So, one by one, he took them down and carried them away to sell. And, I quote, "The tree was happy." Many years later, the boy is now maybe middle-aged. Again, the tree wants to play. But like last time, the boy doesn't want to play with her. He's too busy, and he wants a house. The tree doesn't have a house to offer, but she does give him her branches to use for building a house and becoming happy. He strips the tree of her branches and carries them away. And I once again quote, "The tree was happy." Many years later, same cycle. The boy returns, much older, and he's too old and sad to play. And he just wants to run away and leave his troubles behind. The tree suggests that the boy cuts down her trunk to use as a boat and sail away and become happy. And that's what he does. He leaves the tree as a stump on the ground, taking her trunk away to turn into a boat. She never lived knowing if the boy really succeeded in any of his ventures. She would only ever see him come to her when he needed something, acting in his own self-interest alone, and not for the tree's interest, not concerned for her own well-being. For all we know, he could have lived his entire life away from the tree as an utter failure. But it didn't matter to her as much, though. She gave him what he needed in the end, and I quote, "The tree was happy, but not really." Many years go by, and the boy returns to the tree, now an octogenarian. And this time, the tree is sad. She can't offer the boy anything anymore, as she's been reduced to a simple, seemingly useless stump. Not that anything she offered in the years before would do the boy any good now. He's too weak to eat, to climb, to play. He can't do the things that he once did. Nonetheless, he decides to use what the tree has left. So he sits down on the stump and he rests. And just like the other times, I quote, "The tree was happy." Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8 through 9 say the following: "For it is by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not from yourselves, it is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast." I do have something to say about that, as my own understanding of God and how we treat him pertains to this story. Now, let me be clear, I don't consider myself the saint that I once saw myself to be when I was a child. There's a lot of reasons for that. But that'll come another day. Oh Lord, will we get to that one day? Growing up in Mormonism, you'll learn that you earn grace through multiple efforts, but most notably by your good works. It's a departure from what the aforementioned Ephesian scripture describes. In other sects of Christianity, it's grace alone, and accepting the Lord your God that guarantees you a way home after passing through the veil of mortality. I learned that God gives us opportunities to better ourselves. We teach each other this: if we take advantage of those opportunities and things he gives us, we'll be happy. And he, in turn, will be happy. But is he really happy right now? Humanity has gone down an odd path nowadays. People think that empathy is obsolete. We treat our neighbors as less than. We act contrary to messages of harmony, peace, those that are often shared in the Christian faith and other religious institutions. The tree would not know what we're doing with the things that we're given. She never stopped giving until she had nothing. But unlike the tree, God knows exactly what we're doing with what we're given. Maybe we're kidding ourselves into thinking that he still provides for us. Maybe this is all just a figment of our imagination. Maybe we're using the words of wisdom, twisting the gospel to put other people down rather than raise each other up, regardless of what that spectrum is. Good works or not, maybe we did find a way to boast our grace alone, and we don't think why that grace is really given to us in the first place. Maybe God stopped giving, and since he exists in a plane outside of our own existence, we're none the wiser. God is like the giving tree, but unlike the tree, he is not blind to the toxicity of man. And I just have to say, God damn, is this book depressing! This is a very, very sad book. I didn't look at it that way when I was a kid. But you know, that's just one of the things that happens as you grow older. This is definitely a sad book, without any doubt. But it's not a bad book. It's not bad literature. Because it's getting people talking. One of the core reasons why I wanted to talk about this book and share my own perspective on everything shared here was all because of another channel by the name of Solar Sands. His video essay is like 40 minutes long and it's so informative. And he even talks about the lesser-known 2D animated short film adaptation of The Giving Tree, also narrated by Shel Silverstein. The video does contain some very interesting discussions, and I'll definitely make sure to include that in the description so that you can watch for yourself. I know this video is totally different compared to the energy that came from my first two introductory videos, but I mean, I kind of anticipated that this is the kind of content that I would make from the very beginning, simply because I am just fascinated and love discussing the paradoxes of humanity and life as we all know it. I hope you all found this informative. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you very soon.